Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Today, yet another great lineup. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking with Hugh Newman about ley lines and sacred spaces. And in the second hour, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Amit Goswami about quantum physics and the healing power of integral medicine. What physics and medicine have to do with each other, I have no idea, but we are going to find out. Don't forget, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com, where you can find out about the services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, intuitive readings, so psychic readings, or energy medicine healing. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you too can learn to become a medical intuitive, clairvoyant, or energy medicine practitioner. You can find information about that at AppliedEnergeticsInstitute.com. That's AppliedEnergeticsInstitute.com. Just Energy Radio, all of the archives are available on the Just Energy Radio website. That's www.justenergyradio.com. You can also sign up for our weekly newsletter that'll keep you informed of all the great programming we have coming up. And let me tell you, I've started booking for July through September. I know that's really far out, but it just gets more and more amazing every week as far as I'm concerned. Also, Just Energy Radio, we might be getting picked up by, again, another network. Don't want to announce it yet, but I'm just putting it out there. The shows are also available on YouTube, so if it's easier for you to stream the show on your phone on YouTube, the shows are now archived there, so you can listen to probably the last 6 months of episodes of Just Energy Radio from that location. So let me tell you about our first guest, Hugh Newman, and get him on the line because, as always, we have lots to talk about. Hugh Newman is an Earth Mysteries and esoteric science researcher. He organizes the Megalithomania Conferences, co-edits Avalon Rising magazine, and coordinates talks, films, and workshops at numerous festivals. He has researched the Indigo children phenomena and published a book on that subject. His most recent book, Earth Grids, The Secret Patterns of Gaia's Secret Sites, has been published by Wooden Books. He is currently writing a book about Wandlebury complex near Cambridge. So from Megalithomania.co.uk, please welcome Hugh Newman. Hey, New, are you there? I'm there?
I'm here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming on. Hey, and I even said Megalithomania correctly. Yay! That word is just such a tongue twister.
It can be a bit, yeah, that's for sure.
Well, before we get into talking about ley lines, I know that you have another one of your conferences coming up, and you always have some of the best speakers that speak on the topic of ancient mysteries and earth mysteries at your conferences, and this, again, is no exception. I mean, I was looking through, and I have the page right here through the site, and you have Michael Cremo, a good friend of this show. He's coming on in a couple of weeks because we just love him here, and Klaus Donna, who blows me away, just blows me away. And then a new, very good friend, Brian Forster, talking about the elongated head phenomena, and some of the other people I don't know so well. So maybe you'll have to introduce me to some of them, and we can get them on the show as well. But how long have you been doing this conference, and how do you find such great people to invite?
Well, we've been doing it since 2005. We founded it as me, myself, John Martineau, who's a master geometer, and a guy called Gareth Mills down in Glastonbury. I'm really the only one left sort of running it. But, yeah, we just realised, especially in Britain at the time, there was no real kind of conference or events focusing on the ancient mysteries from a megalithic perspective. So we kind of just decided to take it on ourselves. And we're very inspired by the work of John Michel, and that's where the name comes from. Megalithomania comes from a book he wrote in in the 80s with the same name. And so we kind of took it. He gave us the blessing. He actually died a few years ago, unfortunately. But so we took it on from there, just really to challenge, and open up the debate about what was really going on in prehistory. Because, you look at the evidence, you look at lots of the people who come on your show and, ancient aliens and all this other stuff. That, the answers aren't coming from the archaeologists. They're not coming from the academics, unfortunately. Some are, no doubt about it. But generally, the real good stuff comes from the alternative researchers. And this is why we created the conference, to actually, the stage is set for the academics and the alternative authors to come on and talk about it. We're not like, we're open to everyone. We're not like, closed-minded or anything. But yeah, we're doing it for 5 years, every year. We do it in America now, in October, November kind of time, in New England, various places up there, South Africa, and we're planning things in Australia and Peru with Brian and other things. So got quite a lot going on. Our next one's 12th and 13th of May, down in Glastonbury. We're doing loads of tours as well. It's like 9 days in total, I think.
Wow.
It's kind of ridiculous. I don't know why I'm doing that, but it ends up being quite kind of tiring. But you get charged up by the ancient sites, don't you? So yeah, and if people can't come, they can watch it online. We've got it all online, live streamed, properly, professionally edited by Pentos TV. So yeah, we're really up for sharing it out there. This knowledge that we're bringing together for all these world-class speakers. Great.
One other question, because, I'm calling from the U.S., if they, because of the time difference and work and whatever, are DVDs available of the speakers as well? If you're filming, can they buy the DVD or order the DVD to see it after the fact?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we produce high-quality DVDs. We've got, if you look at our, megalithomania.co.uk website, there's probably 100 talks already on there from previous years. You can just download them as well. MP4s, download audio, MP3s, and yeah, it's easy. And yeah, we put them up on the website straight after, so people can actually watch the archive stream if they want. We upload it and they can watch it at a more reasonable time rather than through the night if they're in America. But so yeah, we make, we're very conscious of that, because another problem or issue that I had with conference, I want to, if I can't go to a conference, I want to be able to watch it, because I'm a conference junkie basically. I want to go and so you want to kind of, so we've really made it a thing that we offer this service as well now. Me and my colleague Jonathan Adams of Pentos TV, we offer our services free to go to conferences and film them and live stream them, because we want to kind of, we realise a lot of the best ones don't get filmed at all. Certainly don't get live streamed or DVDs produced. So we're very, aware that, in this modern kind of era, the TV screen or the computer screen is the primary way of receiving knowledge. So, we've kind of taken that on as a kind of project, really.
Great. I just appreciate everything you do, and again, the people you bring together, and having it be available for someone like me, who I apparently never leave the house. I don't know. Makes it even better.
Yeah. So. Well, I think it's important, though, really, just to kind of get it. It's like what you're doing with your radio show, and lots of people are doing is actually just getting this knowledge out there, get all the, and something happens at conferences. There's like this sort of synergy that kind of occurs, and that's kind of why I think a lot of people still want to go, travel a long way and go and sit with other people in this uncomfortable chairs in this cold room. But no, ours is really nice actually. I'm only joking. But people still, because you meet people, you have experiences, you kind of have connections, and you know what I mean. So you kind of get this whole different vibe. But if people can't come, then we've got that service via the internet available as well.
Great. So let's shift subject and talk about ley lines in sacred spaces, because the last time you were on, I want to say we were talking about the Maya, but we ended up having a whole conversation about megalithic sites in New England, which I was shocked about. We won't talk about that. But let's start off with just maybe a little vocabulary, because we've never done a show talking about ley lines. I mean, there have been, inferences to it and maybe a brief piece here and there. And so what is a ley line?
Okay, it's a good question to start with. There's different ways of approaching this, because the classic ley, when Alfred Watkins in the 1920s, who was a photographer and researcher from Herefordshire, back in the early 1920s, I think it was, he had this vision. He realized all these sites, ancient sites and churches and all these other places connect up into straight lines across the landscape. He originally thought they were ancient tracks used for different things, trade and travel, and he termed them leys, L-E-Y, and he didn't call them ley lines. They were that came later, really, in the 1960s. They were just called leys because a lot of the place names had ley at the end of it, so he kind of coined it, and it's also got other connotations as well, which is from Holland and things like that. But so that was all it was originally. He formed the Old Straight Track Club. He wrote the book. He did a few other books about it. Did a lot of research, and it kind of people going out discovering these leys and all these alignments. And then not long after that, Sir Norman Lockyer, who studied astronomy, he noticed that many of the sites and also some of the leys actually were astronomical sight lines, i.e. Solstice alignments. When the sun rises, you can align 2 or 3 stones to it within a circle or within a, whatever you've got, really. And notice there were correlations, though, that these were built according to archaeoastronomical principles. And then you have the circular leys, which a lot of people don't know about. And these are like almost like concentric rings if you go out from a central point. So you get a main site in the middle, and then you have concentric rings, and some researchers, even back in the 1930s this was, noticed that concentric rings, all the sites would join up on these rings going out into the landscape. So there's a lot of different ways to approach that. So but with leys or ley lines or whatever you want to call them, they're really just alignments of ancient sites across the landscape. There's nothing to do with energy. This is what a lot of people get mixed up with, and different ways of looking at this. But in the 60s, it became popular again. This was actually with the work of John Michel and Amy Michel and Jimmy Goddard and a few others. And the Ley Hunter Society was founded. I actually went to the Ley Hunter Society Moot, their annual meeting last weekend in Avebury, to discuss all these matters. So it was very exciting to that it's still going, even after 100 years or so. So it's really interesting. And so I think in the 70s or early 80s, a researcher called Sig Longred, who is actually speaking at our conference now, I'm very pleased he's coming. He's a superb dowser, geomancer, and researcher. And he termed the name energy leys, where he realized many of these straight line alignments actually had energy associated with them, and you could dowse for them, you could test them with different types of rods and pendulums. But some of them don't. Some leys don't. And some energy leys, these beams of energy going straight across the landscape, there aren't any ancient sites connecting them up. So, so he has to create some terminology for that. And then you get the telluric energy currents, and then you get the sort of yang earth energy currents, the yin earth energy currents. You get different types of energy kind of going on. And this is where you get into the earth energies research. And a lot of people often earth energies really move in kind of weaving around, really, like caduceus or caducei, like serpents. This is where the serpent and dragon kind of names and symbolism comes from. So, yeah, there's different ways of approaching this, but one thing that keeps popping up, and this is something that was first really, really discovered in the 1980s, was there's this great, a good example is the St. Michael line that goes all the way across southern England, from right the way down in Cornwall all the way up to the East Anglian coast. And that's a straight line alignment virtually. You know, it's like a Beltane, Samhain, sunrise or sunset. But also, when these guys, Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhouse, doused them, they found these two energy currents like weaving in and around this straight line. It was really odd, and it was like if you imagine the caduceus symbol with the sword in the middle, or the dagger in the middle, and then you have these two serpents sweeping around it, sort of crossing over. This is what the energy lines do. They almost follow these straight line alignments. So there's all these connections between earth energies and lays and energy lays. So it can get quite confusing, but I hope what I've just described gives some kind of, simple way of looking at it.
One of the things that I've been asked, I mean, in ghost hunting, there is the belief that ghosts travel or spirit travel along these ley lines. And the question that I'm often asked, and I'd like to hear your take on this, is, are they physical in nature? Are they magnetic? Are they electronic? Or are they just purely energetic?
Good question. This is something that there's a few different ways to answer this. There's a few different, angles on this, really. First one, as you mentioned, ghosts, the spirit paths or the death roads or the fairy paths. Now, these are something that really originated in, they think now, in Irish tradition. But they're all over Europe, in America as well, in different places. But this is something that Paul Devereux has a superb book on called Spirit Roads. And he's actually analysed many of these, what appear originally to be ley lines or lays, and actually they're traditionally sort of roads that spirits would move down, and fairies, and especially you get this kind of tradition in Ireland. And even in Ireland, for instance, they believe that not only the spirits and the ghosts and whatever move in straight lines, but also that when there's something blocking the way, or someone's built a shed or a house in the way of one of these straight lines for the fairies and the elementals to move down, actually often that shed will be destroyed the next morning by the spirits of the fairies. Or so everyone, if you built something in the way, you leave both the door and the window open so they can get through. Or some people even chop a corner off the side of their building and rebuild it to make sure it's not on any fairy paths. So you get this kind of thing going on. There's a long tradition of that. So it does suggest there was this obsession with straight lines, for various different reasons, going way back. You get this in America. You get lines coming out from various sites in the Southwest. In Mexico, you get the Sac Bay, and they're like paths that come for sometimes tens of miles, and they're dead straight. You get it all over Peru and Bolivia. Obviously, you have the Nazca lines, which we're going to be visiting again in November with Brian, actually. And so there seems to be this ancient obsession with it. And obviously, one of the things that was put forward quite early on in the 60s was the fact that they were kind of ancient alien UFO landing paths, which I don't really think they are. I think there's a lot more to it than that. But yes, fascinating subject. But I think one of the things worth noting about them really is the fact that it's everywhere. It's all over the world. These traditions seem to be almost like incorporated as part of the megalithic culture that originally built them.
Are they concentrated more in one area than another? And let me even just get a little more specific. You hear a lot about ley lines in Britain and in, the British Islands, and you don't hear people talk about them really in other places. And is it because there's more in Britain, or it's just that people are more aware of the ones in Britain?
Well, I think there's, for some reason, Britain, there seems to be a fascination with these ancient traditions and lays and different sites and things like that. And so I think it's a very kind of antiquarian approach where it just seems to be popular here. A lot of other countries aren't really that interested. So, it's like, fair enough. I don't think there's any more here than there are anywhere else, because fundamentally these alignments are of human making, and they're not actually painted on the landscape. You can't actually see them often, that you have to kind of, visualize them, because they're sites that appear to go in alignment. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so there's this, so you got to look at it from that perspective. I think here in England there was this big antiquarian movement in the late 1800s, early 1900s that really opened up the door. And I think Alfred Watkins was such a visionary. He really put the whole alignments thing on the map, which is still referenced today over and over again. And maybe it wouldn't have even been noticed if it wasn't for him. But yeah, I think it's a global thing. I'm not sure why other countries don't really take it on, but I think it's probably because there's such an abundance of megalithic sites here, and ancient sites and mounds. I mean, there's tens of thousands of ancient sites in Britain. So you could probably join some up that maybe weren't designed like that. I think that's what a lot of skeptics will say. But when you look at the data and you analyze it, and you realize that it can't just be that, there's a lot more going on, and you have evidence of these what's called cursuses or cursi, where you get one right near Stonehenge, for instance, like 300 meters away from Stonehenge. You have this long, carved out in the earth, this mile or two long cursus, which looks like a sort of race course or something, but it's dead straight, and it goes on for quite a distance. Some of them are a couple of 3 miles long. So there's definitely something going on with these straight lines in prehistory.
I've heard reports that the convergence of ley lines, and this might be a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing, but at the convergence that there's a vortex is traditionally found. Is that what you found in your research?
You can do that, especially with the energy lines, yeah. When you have two energy lines crossing. Interestingly, on the Michael line, which it's like a dead straight alignment, then you have the Michael and Mary energy lines as well, weaving around them. Often where the Michael and Mary energy lines cross is actually on also the dead straight alignment. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting when you say that. You do kind of get vortexes. Hamish Miller was one of the people who came up with almost like sort of geometrical stars of energy form where these lines cross. At the local site to me that I'm researching at the moment, Wandlebury near Cambridge, there's an area just in a field, really, just in a field near 200, 300 meters away from the Wandlebury main site. There's actually a place where three lines meet, and they create this 60-foot energy thing happening. I don't know if it's a vortex. I don't know if it seems like it's a spiral. It's almost like it's a great spiral that kind of sinks into the ground. And so you do get that. And this is something that dowsers and geomancers have been picking up. So you do often get that. I mean, but one of the things with these sites is that, like you said, chicken and the egg thing, it's like, what came first? Were the energies there? Did the ancients build it because they sensed energy there? They saw strange lights there. They could even see the energies, or what? Or did they build the site there because it was convenient? And that alone, just having the site there, harnesses the natural energies and creates these, joins the energy lines up. Because you do get these natural energy lines called telluric currents, which are of the magnetic field of the Earth. And they have as you mentioned, they have a magnetic property. But the telluric ones kind of fluctuate between magnetic and electric current, depending on the geology or the water or whatever that they're moving through. And these can create electric charge, it can create magnetic effects. Loads of rock types are heavily magnetic with iron in and magnetite and things like that. So, yeah, you do get huge fluctuations, different types of energies, really, associated with these lines. And, yeah, they will create an effect where they cross over.
Well, I mean, as an intuitive, to me, a vortex is pretty easy to detect if you're looking at a piece of property. I mean, you kind of can't miss them. It's just like womp, 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 womp. It's just this vibrating vortex. I mean, I don't even know how else to describe it. And I could see where the ancients would go, wow, there's a lot of energy here, and then build something on it just from a very, intuitive, there's something going on here.
Absolutely. I mean, this is where I think this is an interesting point, because it's like, I think that the ancient peoples, they didn't have TV screens, they didn't have cars going by, they didn't even have lights, really. They were so tuned in, I think, to their natural environment that they would know where to live. They like animals do, they know where to live. They sense it, they have an intuition about it. And I think this kind of way of being is coming back, and this is really the art of geomancy. And dowsing brings you into that state, I think, for people who don't have natural psychic ability. But you can certainly, after many years of dowsing and being trained by geomancers, I've just got to, the last few years really, I've just got to a point where I can now detect energy lines without needing the rods to find them, which it sounds like the sort of thing you get up to as well. So it's like, but you can get to that state even if you're not, haven't got psychic abilities or very sensitive. You can develop it and grow that within yourself, especially if you've got good teachers to show you how to, work with that. But I think as well, it's also recognizing energies, learning to recognize them, because it's, what type of energy, because you can sense, you can just sort of sense different feelings going on within yourself. You could feel a little bit stressed. Suddenly you could feel a bit down, or you could suddenly relax and feel euphoric. And there's different effects it can really have on you. But a lot of people have said, a lot of geomancers have said this for a very long time, that this is what's going on here. But there's a lot of science now that backs it up, that these energies do have effects on us, and they are natural earth energies. Some have detrimental effects, like geopathic stress, and you get these kind of grid lines that kind of cross, these Hartman and Curry grid lines that can cause stress on the body. And then you have, in certain ancient sites, you get this you can create this yourself, in your back garden or whatever. If you can create certain type of structure, you can actually harness the magnetic and electric current going through the ground, and especially if you're using rocks that have a piezoelectrical effect, like crystalline rocks. They're very heavy, so they will crush into each other and be permanently charged. These sites can affect the pineal gland, and have major effects on it, and have out-of-body experiences, altered states. I think many of these sites may have been built for shamanic purposes, you see. This is certainly something that we seem to have lost in the last, few hundred years.
You're talking about people being able to harness into the energy of these lines. And so what about claims of locations such as the pyramids of Giza? Do you think that those were constructed to harness into the earth energy in that location? Yeah,
absolutely. God, they're a good example, actually. Obviously, the remarkable work of Christopher Dunn should be credited here. He's done some fascinating research, and being an engineer by trade, he's got a natural sort of skeptical approach. He will question everything until the answer reveals itself. I've read his book. I've met him a few times, and I think he's nailed it really about what the pyramids are about. But even before that, there was a superb researcher called Philip Callahan, and I've just been reading his book today actually, and he was saying that the pyramids were like, they have different layers of paramagnetic, i.e., positively magnetic, and diamagnetic, i.e., negatively magnetic types of stone, and the limestone acts as like an insulator. It's like and it holds the energy in. The work of Christopher Dunn, especially fascinating. For me, the thing I find most fascinating about it is his idea. And not only was it like a great generator and had all these chemicals and explosions and all this stuff happening within it, but just the placement of it, somehow it absorbed the energy of the earth to make this happen, and the insulator kept it in. And that would even reduce local earthquakes. and local, and it would absorb the energy that the fault lines were creating. And this is something that's been, they think now, applies to many of the megalithic sites as well, that this may be the case. They're often built on fault lines. They're certainly built on energy lines, but they're built on fault lines, so they're kind of absorbing that energy. And the energy that they're absorbing and harnessing and reusing was being used by humans back in prehistory for various purposes. So there's a lot more to it than I think people realise. And you have to credit the work of John Burke and Kaj Halberg, who wrote the book Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty. Unfortunately, I think that's out of print at the moment, but I think that is one of the most important books I've ever read on this kind of subject. It came out in 2005 and was a revelation, basically, about how these earth energies were used and harnessed by the ancients.
One of the things that has been coming out in, I'll say, alternative thought sources is just, Sam Osminagash's work is just about the vast number of pyramids around the world. I mean, obviously we have what's going on in Egypt and we have what's going on in Mesoamerica, but then there are the ones in China, there are the ones that are in Bosnia, and they're kind of finding pyramids everywhere. Has anyone done any research into evaluating if these other pyramid sites sit on ley lines? And I know you work with Mayans, so have you found that those pyramids in Mesoamerica sit on ley lines as well?
Oh yeah, totally. I think every kind of ancient site, and even churches, interestingly, seem to be aligned. That understanding, that kind of technology of the mind was in situ in many different cultures and many different places around the world. So yes, certainly I think pyramids are part of the plan, and it could have even been a global plan to create this kind of harmonic, kind of megalithic kind of layer over the planet, because it was actually entirely, the Earth was unstable and it actually helped stabilize the Earth. I'm quite keen on that idea at the moment, especially as we, reach towards the end of 2012, etc. But they were certainly on the energy currents. I did a lot of research in Mexico. I spent a total of 6 months there traveling and researching, and I'm very interested in the Olmec sites there, as I think we mentioned last time. Mm-hmm. But you have the Great Plumed Serpent energy current that goes through La Venta and lots of other places in that area. It goes all the way down to South America to Lake Titicaca, Peru, Bolivia, etc. But yeah, and they're all sort of based upon energy lines. You look at the geodetic relationship between them, and some of them are in straight lines. Whether this is all deliberate, we don't know, but the evidence seems to suggest that that is the case on a global scale.
I just find that that's amazing. People talk about building the pyramids, any of them, or some of these megalithic sites, and how did they do it, and blah, blah, blah. But then you add just another layer of them being built on these, ley lines or in vortexes or, something that has to do with the physicality and the nature of the Earth. And, and it just makes you go, okay, well, did they know and understand what they were actually plugging into, and were they trying to maximize the power of nature in the design, but not just locally, this whole, as you're saying, global plan?
I think that is certainly the case. I mean, the evidence is there. I mean, and it actually gives an answer, not necessarily the answer, but it gives an answer to why these sites were built. And so I think that it needs to be addressed, that side of things, and especially because of the work of John Burke, who's actually scientifically tested hundreds of sites around the world, including the pyramids of Mexico and others. But the conclusions are startling. That yes, they were designed for that purpose, and the most amazing thing is that they all still work. They haven't run out. The battery lasts forever because it's the Earth. The energy comes from the Earth and the Sun, so the batteries, not going to run out of that kind of energy. And I think this is what's so amazing, that by testing now, like testing the seeds and getting results, you can actually take seeds into these sites, and the energy charges up the seeds like a fertility energy. You plant the seeds and you get a high yield of crop. So this is like a fertility, like farming technology. that they were using. It wasn't just to get altered states of consciousness. It was like because of the energy was like they needed it. They needed more food for the growing populations, and so I think that they had to do that. And I think the brain size and intelligence hasn't changed over thousands of years. I don't think so. There's no reason why they weren't at the same level in a different way of technology as we're at today.
See, I think your correlation to the plants, and growing crops is interesting because there are myths that suggest, well, all right, they don't suggest, they tell, where, back in the day, I think my favorite one comes out of, it's Gamboa, whatever, Inca, where he talks about the Inca talking about the land being Yunca, and plants would grow in 5 days. And, I just love how some of the early Spanish chroniclers talked. It's like, how could their plants grow in 5 days when if you're over here, it takes more than 5 days for them to grow, and they don't know what they're talking about. I love the Spanish chroniclers because, they're telling the truth of what they were told because they don't believe a thing of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we talk about Peru, for instance. Not many people realize in Peru that they had high-level agriculture and they were mixing seeds and grains and growing things in different ways going back over 10,000 years. And this is some, a couple of years old, this research, but it's been proven that that is the case. So people think Sumeria and, Middle East is kind of the origins of agriculture, but actually there's evidence now it's in Peru, which I find fascinating. And they found all this stuff all through the Amazon as well. They found all these amazing earthworks and what looks like English hill forts and mounds, structures, and they were using a certain type of soil, and somehow creating and working with this soil that they collected to enhance it. And this is going back thousands of years. They've only discovered all this stuff because they're hacking down the rainforest. It's obviously completely grown over the ancient civilizations that once existed there. So yeah, I think this technology is important. I think it could be important in the future. I think if carry on using the Earth's resources like we do, it could become problems in the very near future. But if we know how to at least make sure our food and our seeds and our grains are healthy, we're healthy, then we can survive. And as long as we know where the water is as well, we can survive. So we don't need to rely on, fuel. We don't need to rely on provided electricity. We can actually generate our own energy, from the ancient sites, amazingly.
Well, and we might need to refer to that.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I was curious, and I know the answer in a generic sense, but have you found evidence, and I'm talking kind of in a bigger, more global sense, of continuous usage of sites from prehistory to present time? Like, I know there are a lot of ancient sites, like I'll take like the Temple Mound, for example, in Jerusalem. It has been built on and built on and built on and built on. But is that a common thing when you're talking about the location of these sacred sites, that everybody is drawn to them?
Yeah, it seems that the location of sites are definitely used over and over again. This is evident in England. It's very clear. The church adopted the pagan sites. There was a sort of decree back in the 400, around 420 AD, coming from Rome, actually, that they should actually adopt the sites and not destroy them, build churches next to them or on them, so the locals keep coming back. And I think that's the case. I think if there's an energy spot, it's an energy spot. It's not going to, it might move a little bit. If the Earth's crust is shifting slightly and things like that, and the energy shift around, that's certainly possible. But I would imagine that, yeah, that's absolutely the case, that they are rebuilt. In Mexico, you have pyramids built upon pyramids, built upon pyramids, at many, many different levels. I recently went to Colombia, went to a site called San Agustin in southern Colombia, which is an awesome megalithic complex stretching about 200 square miles. And you could clearly see that they had two different levels, possibly three. One was like 10 or 15 feet below the ground. It was that much older. And there were ones, they'd been covered up, and others had been built on top of them. And so you can, I think what you suggested is absolutely true, and I think you can find evidence of that in many different, if not all, places around the world.
You talked earlier about the fairy paths, and very generically about stories and legends associated with the ley lines or the sacred sites. Are there some other ones that you've discovered that just titillate your interest?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that gets me, I mean, if you're talking about folklore and tradition, I mean, I've been doing a lot of research. I've actually done a whole DVD about this called Stone Age Survival, about earth energies, fertility, and secrets of the stones. This came out a few years ago from a couple of lectures that I did. And when you start looking at the ancient folklore, the legends, the stories that get passed on generation to generation, you find a lot of evidence about what these sites were used for, and a lot of it refers back to fertility and fecundity, and basically health and things like that. So it's almost like these sites were they were built for, not multi-purpose, but their energy effects of them were extremely good for you, even cure you of different problems or diseases. If they went to these sites, could get more fertile if they were infertile, and it would enhance that within them. This is just a fertility energy of these earth energies, which works on all levels. Doesn't just work on humans or seeds. Fertility is fertility. It works on everything, and so. Yeah, you get this in Brittany and France as well. You get this all over Britain and Ireland, the same kind of legends. You have different legends. You have legends of giants building the sites in one night. You get a lot of those. I find that interesting because I've been doing a bit of research into the existence and discoveries of giant skeletons, and there's a lot of truth in that as well, surprisingly. I thought it was a bit of a joke to start with, but actually, my God, there's a lot of evidence to back that up now. So maybe they were giants and they were building these sites. That's how they got built, because a giant can actually carry a big block of stone. Us tiny little humans can't. And then you have, you go to the legends and the folklore and the stories in Peru, Bolivia, Mexico, places like that, and you have this. They always refer back to with a fondness and a good feeling about these ancient gods who came from the sea or emerged from Lake Titicaca on a raft of serpents. They're fair-skinned, long-haired, long-bearded, with robes, and they taught all the arts of civilization and being peaceful, even vegetarianism and things like that. And they were powerful magicians. They could summon lightning and thunder and change the weather. And they built these megalithic temple sites, for example, Tiwanaku, in one night. Again, one night. There's echoes of the same stories all around the world. So, yeah, the legendary status of these sites is very interesting, but unfortunately, it gets dismissed by academics very quickly because they find it silly, like a joke. Where's the science in that? And I think that's where the problem partly lies, that we don't have these traditions anymore. We have TV to keep us occupied. We don't tell stories to our kids, grandchildren, things like that. So I think there's a lot to be said for these, and they should be taken seriously.
I think that there are a lot of shows. I mean, not to defend TV, and actually on TV, the content of real program has gone almost completely away. Now it's all reality-based TV. How X-Men and these people, and it's like whatever. But they have done service, like History Channel, Discovery Channel. I mean, they have actually put out some good information. Okay, I will say not necessarily 100% true information, but information nonetheless that does stimulate the mind and make you curious or provide you with some insights into a topic.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think if you're looking at TV and film and stuff like that. I mean, I studied film many years ago, and there's with the movies, you get a surprising amount of stories which are actually rehashes of old legends and old myths, and even astronomical myths based upon precession and the movement of the stars and things like that. I mean, Star Wars is the classic example based upon Joseph Campbell's ideas of the hero sort of figure, and how that all sort of unfolds in the archetypes. So, I'm not dismissing TV, but there's a lot of junk, as we know, and the advertising and all that kind of stuff. It's just that is the primary force that is affecting us and influencing us, whereas it wasn't like that before. We were tuned in with the land, we were talking with our elders, we were learning things through experience, making things from scratch. It's just a different mindset, a different culture. There's nothing wrong with our culture. Well, there is, but not that much, but maybe there is, who knows. But, we really need to, take a look at that. And I think, there was a golden age back then, really. And there's nothing wrong with looking back with fondness on that golden age and bringing some of these principles back into our lives.
Well, I mean, this is kind of one of my little soapboxes, but, if they turn the power off on the planet, I would say people that are younger than our generation, and I'll be pretty liberal with that, would be hard for us to survive.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone really knows where their local spring is. I mean, what if they turn the water off? Just be quite an interesting experiment. Turn the water off, see if some people get on.
No, because then the toilets won't flush, and Hugh, that would be a really bad thing. They could turn the lights off, not the water. Not the water.
I don't think the power companies will be listening to my advice. Don't worry. But I think it would just make people realise, crikey, where is the spring? Where is the local source of? Oh my God, what's going on? It's like you're going to survival. This is why I called this DVD Stone Age Survivals, because what if, like you were saying, did happen? How would we deal with it? And so I think the ancients, the clues are there. That there's always underground water near a megalithic site. Always. It's almost like they were designed to. One of their purposes was to attract water to it, or they knew they wanted to mark a nearby water source. If you dig here, you're going to find water. The problem that's happening now, though, and this is happening everywhere, is the water tables are getting lower, and this is a big problem because trees are dying in a huge, vast way. There's a guy locally to me called Buster Nolan, who's this legendary figure who's been doing some amazing research with Victor Schauberger's great big pot you bury in the ground, and you spin the water, and it charges up the landscape and attracts water to the surface, and it's saving trees. But these same principles were at work in the ancient sites as well. So I really think there's a survival message with these sites as well, rather than just intelligence message or alternative mind messages. There's something going on that these are teaching us many different things.
One of the things that I find interesting as a concept that is put out, is the idea that like pyramids produce free energy that people were able to tap into, based on, from the pyramids. And when you look at what the ancients were doing, from kind of that perspective and a technological perspective, they were living clean. There's not McDonald's cups everywhere. They didn't have to have all of these things to generate technology. They used the earth and the products of the earth as the technology itself.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a very, very important point. because, yeah, I mean, we are just, it just seems like the culture we live in now just doesn't get that. I mean, this is what a lot of people, you know, are stashing food for 2012 and, you know, water. I mean, you know, people think it's going to happen at the end of the year. And, you know, we have to kind of rethink our lifestyles if something does happen. I mean, really, we do. We're especially in the cities, you know, it could get really messy. But I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, learning and understanding energies, understanding your local landscape energetically, knowing where the water is everywhere you go, find out where the springs are, find out where you can fill up bottles of water and things like that. Because the problem is as well is the pollution, obviously, as well, which is in the water system, which can also cause problems. But yeah, like you say, that they lived a green life, like a kind of sustainable lifestyle, whereas we don't. We're producing much more than we can deal with, and I think it's going to it could topple civilization even.
So you've mentioned 2012 a couple of times, so I'm just going to ask, so do you think something is actually going to happen on 2012, or I'll be more specific, December 21st, 2012?
It's going to be the biggest party humanity has ever seen.
Actually, our show airs on December 21st, 2012, and I'm planning a show that's entitled, What Were You Doing While the World Was Coming to an End? So you're welcome to call in and share your 2012 stories with the listeners.
I might be on a remote island in the South Pacific by then, so we'll see.
With lots of sustainable water and plants.
Too right. Yeah, no, we've got a lot of plans for this year, but I'm not really doom and gloom. But I just, I've been sort of keeping an eye on that subject for years now, for like a decade or more. And some of my best friends are authors who've written books about 2012. I can just name drop if you like, Jeff Stray and Mark Healy, and I'm quite got to know John Major Jenkins rather well. And so yeah, it's kind of interesting how they're all kind of can't really. You know, where have they gone? I can't find them anymore. What are they up to now? Yeah, so it's quite amusing, really. But yeah, I mean, if anything's going to happen at the end of 2012, let's just hope it's a positive thing, and I think it's an opportunity, really. And this is something that my friend Mark Healy's doing. He's produced and created this Peace 2012 project. I think it's peace2012.net is the website, and anyone who's doing any events on December the 21st, 2012 can hook up into that website and link in and we'll do a big global meditation at 11:11 a.m. when that's the exact time of the solstice that day as well. So yeah, maybe we're creating our reality with 2012. Maybe the Mayans and the Olmecs who created the calendar foresaw that and reflected on that heading into the future, and we're picking up on it now. So I'm quite looking forward to 2013, to be honest with you.
I think the whole planet is waiting for 2013. I mean, I think that a lot of people, even though they've kind of put it a little bit in the background, it still sits back there. Yeah, but what if? But I think your suggestions of knowing where the springs are, I mean, that's just smart.
Yeah, it's like common sense, isn't it, really? But a lot of people don't have that, and they're not taught that, and they're almost like programmed away from that, which is unfortunate. I think if you were left to your own devices, and you would actually pick up a lot of common sense. But that's the nature of the culture we're in, unfortunately. Yeah.
Let's see. So, what else have you been up to? I mean, it's been a while since I've spoken to you, and like in your bio, all right, hang on, let me bring that screen up. In your bio, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, it says that you're writing a book about Wandlebury Complex.
Yeah, Wandlebury.
Wandlebury
Complex. That's a beautiful site, just near Cambridge. I'm living in East Anglia, this beautiful 16th century cottage at the moment, and I'm deliberately here because I'm writing a book about the relatively local area, and there's this fascinating site called Wandlebury where I've been going since I was a kid. I grew up in the village next door to it. It's got like megaliths nearby, ancient mounds, ley lines, energy lines. chalk hill figures, ghostly stories, and people have had weird experiences there, and crop circles have appeared there. So yeah, I'm doing a book about that place because it's just been on my mind for years, and I'm just sort of deciding to sort of really get local for a bit. And then when that one's out, which is coming out this summer, I'm going to get out and about around the world a bit more and write more about my research in Peru and Mexico and places like that. And so if people want to check out what I'm up to, they can just go to megalithomania.co.uk /Hugh Newman.html. They can just Google Hugh Newman, they'll find me. It comes up in Google.
You do?
Yeah, I'm there.
You're everywhere. So we have this, well, actually we're back on time. The clock started late on this thing, so I'm looking at two different clocks. So we have about 3 minutes left. Why don't we just kind of talk and once again review, because we've had a lot more listeners come on, about the Megalithomania Conference that's coming up.
Okay, yeah, I mean, well, it's on the 12th and 13th of May in Glastonbury, England. It's going to be live streamed, so anyone can tune in and watch it, and they can watch the archive the day after if they don't want to stay up all night if they're in America. Top lineup, obviously, we've got Michael Cremo, Robin Heath, who's a fantastic speaker. He's based in Wales, actually, and he's done some breakthrough research on Stonehenge and the connection with Stonehenge with other sites around Britain. And obviously Klaus Donner, who spoke at our South Africa conference. He is absolutely superb on about secret kind of collections and artifacts that have been collected over the decades and that are never in museums or never get mentioned anywhere. And there's a ton of, cool speakers. Kate Masters, she's doing a talk about the Orkneys and the Shetlands in northern Scotland. There's a woman called Megan Rice who's doing a talk about the Sheila and the Gig sort of female fertility effigies all over churches and ancient sites in Britain. There's just there's definitely a lot going on. Obviously, Brian Forrester is coming over from Peru. He's going to be speaking at our conference. He's also doing a talk on the Monday night as well. And so people in America may be able to sort of tune in for that. That's on Monday.
Do you know if he's going to get to bring an elongated head with him to the conference?
Yeah, I think he's having his head reshaped for his English.
I'm going to tell him you said that.
And Sig Longren speaking, I mentioned earlier. John Neal, who's does some superb work on ancient metrology and measurement systems. Yes, we've got a lot going on. We're doing a ton of tours. We're doing 4 days of tours to Stonehenge, Avebury, and all these incredible sites. We really kind of get people their money's worth. And we're doing a 4-day extended tour down to Cornwall, all these beautiful sites down in southwestern tip of England. Stunning place, and we're going to spend like 4 days down there exploring, staying in this beautiful B&B, looking at all these ancient sites and earth energies. We're going to go to St Michael's Mount. It's going to be really good fun, and your listeners are welcome to join us.
And you were saying something about one in the U.S. in October. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, we're planning one. We did one last October in Connecticut, in Glastonbury, Connecticut, interestingly. And we're planning one probably, I'm just in discussions this weekend, actually, with my colleague Jason Matozzo. And we're going to be looking at where and when we're going to do it. It's probably going to be late October, early November, either in Connecticut or Massachusetts, nearer Boston, perhaps. Or he's trying to persuade me that we do it in actually California. Which will be a little bit warmer, but a lot further away. So we're going to be sort of announcing that in the next few weeks, probably. We're also doing, throughout the summer, we do festivals and events all across England. We're doing tour to Wales with Robin Heath. We've got plans to go to Peru and Easter Island in November. With a very special guest, with me and Brian and a very special guest. We're going to announce that very soon. That's going to be like a proper organised 2-week tour or more really. So we've got a lot going on. I'm going to be staying down that way into 2012, into 2013 rather, and probably heading over to the South Pacific, which is where I've wanted to go for years, to like Tonga, and Tahiti and various other places. There's a huge amount of megalithic sites down that way. So yeah, it's all very exciting. So people just keep an eye on things on megalithomania.co.uk.
And there's the music, which means we need to go to break. Hugh, thank you so much, and you'll have to let me know about the U.S. one, and we'll talk and maybe get some of your people on to the show.
Absolutely, we'd love that. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Hugh. That's Hugh Newman. His website is megalithomania.co.uk, and we'll be back with Megalithomania after these messages.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.